Yep, I'm ready.
Awesome. Hey, I'm excited to introduce our next guest, Tim Michaels, an Army veteran who was just promoted to Assistant Manager of Operations and Planning for UGG DTC at Deckers Brands. Based in ice-covered Memphis, Tennessee, Tim started his civilian journey at Deckers in the call center, moved into wholesale operations, and has climbed the ranks with multiple promotions in under 2 years each, showcasing rapid growth through hands-on roles in supply chain and performance planning. A graduate of Deckers Trailblazers Leadership Program, his expertise in streamlining DTC operations, fostering team culture, and leveraging employee resource groups makes him a good mentor for veterans translating their logistics skills to civilian retail. Tim, thanks for joining us. You ready to get on to the old career and highlights?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, hey, thanks for coming, man. Any little bits of wisdom we take, but congrats on the new promotion. So,
Thank you.
as an Army vet, can you walk us through kind of how you made the jump from service to civilian work? Starting with the call center at Deckers, and then kind of the wholesale and all those quick promotions. What'd you do? How'd it go? Did it hurt?
Yeah. So after I got out of the Army, I immediately went into factory work. I drove forklift for 3-ish years or so at a couple of different factories in Southern Illinois. I realized that I didn't want to do that long term for my career. And I was also very tired of Southern Illinois at that point. So I kind of just took a leap of faith. I just was talking to my parents one day and I just said, you know what, I'm going to move to Denver. Job market seems strong out there and we'll kind of see what happens. So I packed up and moved to Denver. My first day out there, I walked into a temp agency. They got me a job at another factory out there. I figured, just while I'm first getting started in Denver, I will, take whatever I can and just work from there. So I was working in a factory in Denver, and then I saw a Facebook post for seasonal call center reps for Deckers Brands, which is UGG, Hoka, Teva, and at the time Sanuk. So I went in and got in as a seasonal temp, and then I was able to get hired on from there. I kind of got lucky at the time where Deckers was moving their customer experience group from California to Broomfield, Colorado, and was able to get hired on as a call loop and quickly worked my way up where I worked as a territory account rep for some mom and pop shops and for Teva and Sanuk. Then got promoted up to a key account rep for UGG, where I managed the Journeys, Dick's Sporting Goods, all of our military accounts as well. And then from there, I was able to get promoted to our team lead for Hoka, Teva, and Sanuk. Account for it was still within CE. And then right around COVID happening, Deckers opened up a lot of positions as remote. So I was able to move outside of what normally would just be allowed in Denver. They opened a lot of our corporate positions to remote. So I was able to move into demand planning as an assistant demand planner for UGG DTC, and then got promoted up to a demand planner. They actually then kind of reorged us into operations planning. So kind of partially of demand planning and also operations planning of making sure our inventory is in the correct areas at all times. And then got promoted up to senior operations planner. And like you just mentioned, actually just got promoted to assistant manager for planning operations UGG DTC.
So sounds like as soon as you get the job kind of figured out, they're like, hey, let's move you on.
Yep, pretty much.
Do you feel like that's part of your background on the military side or just a personal thing?
It's a little bit of both. I feel like a lot of people who go into the military have that just natural drive about them. And they're willing to just kind of roll with the punches. And because of that, I've always been also just in general a curious person wanting to learn. So I was able to, just continue learning and continue expanding my knowledge base. So I've just been able to move up that way.
So, I mean, on the military side, did you take any like logistics skills, operations stuff, and then kind of bring it over with you, or did you have to learn it all brand new?
I had to learn it all brand new. I was military police in the Army, and then I did honor guard as well. So I mean, there was nothing about my military background that translated into what I'm currently doing. Um, I learned very quickly after being military police that I did not want to be police in civilian life. It was not my interest long term. So I was able to just kind of transition from there. So I, unfortunately, I didn't use that military background that I could have to go into civilian world. It sometimes you just get put into that job that you don't want to do long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that happens to a ton of people going into
Yep.
the DoD, or they just misunderstand what it is, thinking I'm
Yep.
going to be a cop, not realizing they're like, nah, it's more security work, and you're going to be dealing with some drunks and idiots.
Yep. Yeah, especially within military life, military police, you're dealing with domestic and drunk and disorderly almost every time.
And the kids shoplifting at the base exchange, post
Yep,
exchange.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's something I used to hear a lot. So I mean, how did you get onto that side of the house? What are the steps that you took to kind of get more into the logistics side, supply side stuff? So that way somebody who goes, hey, that's been interesting, but maybe I was a cop or something like that. What were the steps that got you there?
So once again, just being curious, when I moved out to Denver, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of got lucky that I just fell into a great company. And they've offered plenty of courses on supply planning and logistics and the supply chain. And I just in general, using those free resources online. I don't know if anyone was aware, but like Harvard during COVID opened up a ton of like free courses. So taking some of those courses online, where it was completely free, kind of expanded my knowledge base and got me more knowledge into supply chain logistics.
Yeah, then you throw your resume, you're Harvard educated.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to mention a degree, but Harvard educated.
Exactly.
So talk to me about the Trailblazers leadership program. What's that all about? How's it helped you? How's it affect the company? What's it look like?
Yeah. So Trailblazers is a program that our learning and development team came up with at Deckers, and it was kind of like a new way to look at leadership. It was trying to break the cycle of like old school leadership mentality of like my way or the highway, and kind of like expanding the knowledge base of leaders and how to deal with situations. It was I think I was in the third iteration of the class, so it was still very brand new at the time. We dealt with conflict resolution, developing your team, kind of just trying to break that old school mentality of what leadership was. I believe it was a 9-month course within our organization, and I believe, and they work with a national program as well, I believe, on that. So other companies are starting to kind of do their own version of Trailblazers as well.
How much of that was yeah, I already know this because they hammered it into my head versus, oh, this is neat.
It was actually very all new, especially coming like I had not been in a traditional corporate leadership position before. So for me, it was a lot of newness, and it was kind of I had always seen leaders kind of with the old school mentality. Just a lot of your bosses are been in the company for a long time, so seeing how that kind of shift to the new school mentality of it is not my way or the highway. It is kind of like an open discussion and being willing to kind of listen and take what people underneath and above you are saying at a different kind of like lens.
So you've kind of got a perspective of probably not a ton of people have there, and having done the military leadership part and now seeing the corporate leadership part. So what do you see that translates that we're just probably putting in the wrong language, that kind of a corporate culture goes, oh, that's what I'm looking for, but we're just having problems translating it?
I mean, it's a good question. So
Thank you.
yeah, with it's not so much as like the translation of it. It's just having that openness to listen. That's always been like my big thing is as a leader or as someone who isn't a leader, and you don't have direct reports, kind of just having that open mind and, taking different opinions and different viewpoints and just kind of like trying to see it from their lens. You may not always know why something is being directed towards you. And I feel like good leaders will kind of try to explain why something is being pushed that way. And you're not always going to have those good leaders, but you can be a good leader within your own team by asking that why, and kind of having that understanding of why are you trying to do something this way, or what's kind of the end goal here. I think that's kind of the big thing, is just having that open dialogue.
Yeah, coming from you did in, Army MP, you're not going to have a lot of that compared to other branches and MOSs, AFSCs, and rates and such.
Yeah.
Tough adjustment or a welcome one?
Both. Definitely a tough adjustment on the fact of like it did nothing. Like I said, nothing in my military life prepared me for what I'm doing now. So that was kind of the tough adjustment, but at the same time, a very welcome adjustment because, like I said, I knew I didn't want to do that long term.
So talk to me about like the other orgs and groups that you, oh, sorry. Hey, Clay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Tim, thank you very much for your time. And hi, I'm in Colorado, so long time. Nice to chat with you. You mentioned, the program, the leadership development program. What other like things when you were translating your military experience going into Deckers or going into anything else that you had maybe some friction points to that you learned to overcome in order to better prepare yourself for that next program that was outside the development program that you're already in?
Sorry, it was breaking up a little bit.
Try that again, Clay.
I apologize. I don't know what the heck happened there. So you went through Decker's leadership development program and you were growing yourself as a person. Besides that, what military skill was a friction point for you that you have added some lubricant to sit there and help you grow yourself inside the organization?
So one thing that definitely helped was patience. I mean, everyone in the military has heard the hurry up and wait, mentality. Having that ability to just be patient and sit back and kind of try to see the big picture of things, and not try to just push everything along constantly, has been a big thing. I hope that
thank you
answers.
So talk to me about some of the tough spots you hit in the ops planning, like supply chain hiccups, and kind of how maybe your military background helped you solve that. Because like looking at that stuff, I look at resume translation, interview stuff to say, hey, this is my experience and this is how it helped here. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so obviously some big challenges within supply chain has always been, especially, companies having product from overseas, the ports and kind of dealing with those. And so I feel like within the military, like you learn how to speak to so many different groups and so many different people, that having that like kind of chameleon ability of like jumping into, whether that be global supply chain, or the transportation team, learning to speak their languages and try to kind of talk on their level of everything, that has definitely helped.
Cool. Hey, so if somebody's eyeing like an apparel, a shoe company, that kind of stuff, like how does like Decker's back career growth based on your path from obviously the call center to, the boss level, what mid-tier or starter jobs do you recommend for folks trying something new? Is there anything in particular like, oh yeah, these folks would kill this, or they should look at it?
So one thing that I think, and this is not necessarily just a footwear or an apparel company, that I would look at, is kind of their work-life balance and their company culture. One big thing that I have loved about Deckers is their employee resource groups. We have the Veterans Employee Resource Group, or Verge. We meet usually monthly. I haven't been able to be a part of it as much lately, just because everything going on. But having those companies that have those resource groups and have that work-life balance and are pushing their culture and towards a positive side, those are always big things to look at, because you feel like you do have those people that you can reach out to when you're struggling, to help you out. And whether that be struggling professionally or personally, there's always groups there for your help. I never like the whole like, well, where I work is a family kind of thing, because that's not true. That's not your family. But it can be kind of like that second group that you can rely on when you find those good connections.
Yeah, unless it's a family company, it's all family.
Yeah,
It's not family. Keep that in mind.
exactly. And there's that fine line of the whole, well, we're a family versus, we're not a family, but we are here for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I see it all the time. Some places are much better than others. I gotta
Yep.
imagine like doing what you've done, like the networking has been huge. So how'd you kind of make those connections that sped up promotions, and what kind of tips would you have for the folks here planning on doing the same thing? How do you go about that personally?
Yeah, I mean, my thing is, don't be afraid of someone's title. Everyone is just a person at the end of the day. I don't know how many coworkers I've seen that like, oh, why are you reaching out to this person? They're, a senior director or a vice president, in their org. But I had a question for them and I needed it answered. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to people that are higher up than you. Like, at the end of the day, everyone's just a person. Obviously, pick your times and your moments of doing that. But, I feel like a lot of people, especially nowadays, are willing to make those connections. So just, kind of take that leap.
Yeah, the hierarchy isn't, some companies will be, but the hierarchy isn't as rigid as the chain of command. It's not like you're an E2 calling the colonel at his office and start asking him questions.
Exactly.
So that's a hard thing for folks to get over, because I know like my first foray into corporate is like, okay, it's just my boss. I'm not talking to her boss, the boss after that. And then I learned is like, well, if I want to get stuff done,
Yep.
sometimes you got to take that risk. It works out. But could you kind of paint a picture of your daily life at Deckers?
Yeah. So usually, obviously first thing, kind of go through, check emails and everything, see what's going on for the day. Depends on, what kind of cycle we're in. If we're current, like when in one of our buying cycles, I'll kind of prep our forecasts and work with our merchandising team to figure out what product they're expecting that they're going to need in any given month, and translate that into our order book. And then from there, I'll work with our supply planners to make sure that we're buying the product that we need at the right time. So it will be into our DCs in time to ship to retail stores or ship out to our end customers via the websites. And then also that's kind of like the future planning. But at the same time, we have what we call it as in-season business, so current months. So I'm just making sure that all of our order book is scheduled, meaning that it has supply behind it. And, just making sure, working with our merch team to make sure that what we currently have in our order book is still good for now. And then I'll work with our cross-functional partners on wholesale to make sure that if they have inventory that we need, or if we have inventory that they need, that we can kind of work cross-functionally to make sure all of our accounts and our DTC business is getting what it's needing. Obviously, that's in a perfect world when we have all the inventory available. Sometimes it's tough calls on, X account's going to get shorted, or our DTC group is being shorted, whether it may, it's whatever's the best for the overall company at that point.
What, Tim, is out of all those working groups, tends to be the group that you have, going back to friction, that you have to align a lot more to get something done. Is it the DTC team, or is it the actual retail team, or is it like your wholesale partners that you generally have some of the friction that you got to work with just a little bit more to kind of motivate them to that direction?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it because it is the other side of the business. You would say it would be the wholesale team because they're trying to hit their numbers, we're trying to hit our numbers. So neither side wants to necessarily give up inventory because that hurts them on trying to hit their numbers. So saying friction, I guess, is a little bit harsh, but like at the end of the time, they're trying to get their numbers, so we have to work together back and forth, and that usually takes the most amount of like kind of compromise on both sides to accomplish.
Yeah, got to keep both sides of the equation happy.
Exactly, and just in general, I understand. The people that I work with on the wholesale side, they're working with the sales reps who their bonuses a lot of times are dependent on their accounts getting so much product. So obviously they don't want to give up that product because that affects their bonuses. But at the end of the day, it is. I feel like we have good people on both sides of the business that are, understand it's what's best for the company, but there is always that little bit of friction of like trying to make sure people are understanding that it is what's best for the company, not just necessarily what's best for you.
Yeah, it's a tough compromise when you start talking bonuses because that's something that we don't think about. Like, hey, sometimes somebody else is going to get hurt because you got to succeed.
Yep.
There's just so much money going around. It's not like government will just print off more and give you an enlistment bonus.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, you mentioned DTC, direct to consumer, for those who don't know, several times. But so how do you drive those process tweaks? And kind of how can we sell our our military flexibility, semper gumby, when we're looking at companies doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I mean, so once again, that kind of just always being curious, looking for the better way to have the square peg fit in the round hole, trying to always figure out the better processes and the better reporting techniques, being flexible and just kind of rolling with the information that you're given and trying to get to that end goal. That, that's always been my key thing, was just always trying to look at things from a different lens. And, then also talking to your cross-functional partners to understand what they are needing as well. One thing that I've recently started has been meeting with cross-functional partners to figure out on the reports that I send out, what is stuff that they're having to then pull into from like an outside source into my report, and like where can I just fix that and like kind of close that gap where they're no longer having to pull in outside data. So that's kind of my mindset, is just always being curious and always being open to change.
Yeah, you mentioned curious several times. I'm curious now. Has that ever gotten you into a bad position where you've had to kind of tap dance back and use some skills that that you had to use in front of the first sergeant back in the day?
Yeah, definitely. But that's where also kind of testing things out before you publish them to greater groups becomes a big thing. So where, being curious, you can get to new reports and new ways of looking at things. But that's where your coworkers kind of come in handy, where you can present it to them, make sure that they're not seeing any big gaps or anything like that, and be afraid to fail, because at the end of the day, like, failure will ultimately lead to success. I feel like you're going to fail 100 times before you succeed once. So when you fail at a report, go back and try to figure out what you did wrong and what you need to fix that. And don't be afraid to scrap something if it's not working. Don't try to defend it and sit there and, pound your fist on the table saying this is working, this is, this is what I want to do, when it's clearly not working. So, accept that if it's not working, that you need to kind of start over.
Yeah, start fresh. I mean, I have made mistake after mistake, but the biggest thing is that you learn from them much more than your successes. Your successes tend to put you back on your laurels, but your failures are where you really learn. Clay, go ahead, sir.
Tim, I kind of want to circle back to the mid part when you were with the PLG team, because I'm looking at the timeline on your LinkedIn, and that was a really interesting time, really kind of life cycle. I have some friends who do what you do, and I've spoken to them during that time period talking about COVID. How challenging was that when you had already a pre-planned life cycle on a bunch of product, and all of a sudden every other retailer who I know and manufacturer I know sat there and basically scrapped everything? How flexible were you having to get in that situation during that time, because stuff wasn't coming in? You were trying to clear through back ends, there were product lines being killed, everything like that, just because nobody really knew. What was that sort of time frame for you like, and how did your military experience help you set yourself up for success to get you there and get over that hump?
Yeah, definitely the beginning of COVID was absolutely crazy. Everything kind of came to a screaming halt for a little bit, and then kind of reset everything to once people figured some stuff out. Within our company, we pretty much went completely remote, which was very challenging because not everyone had any ability to work at home. And didn't have the equipment. So luckily Deckers kind of like gave us everything that we needed to be able to work from home and kind of like set up home offices. We were able to go in and get supplies from the office. They set up times where you would come in at one at a time to grab the stuff that you needed. And then from an industry standpoint, like I got lucky that what we were providing was what stuff's kind of like people jump for, within the UGG side, slippers and blankets and your cozy stuff that you're going to be working from home in all the time. And then on Hoka, it was all the running shoes, and people were wanting to go out and run because that was one of the only things that you could do social distancing, was run by yourself and, try to stay in shape that way. So within Deckers, like stuff kind of blew up where we couldn't necessarily get everything out in time because we had so much demand going with wholesale accounts. So the challenge more was on incoming supply, I feel like, from our factories, because obviously a lot of the stuff, the ports were getting so congested and everything. So working within CE and with our sales reps and working with the accounts to try to make sure that we were getting as much out as we could as possible. Really what helped me on my military background with that was, once again, just, rolling with the punches. And everyone knows that change is constantly happening in the military. So just being able to kind of pivot and just roll with everything. Because, in the military, you get told to go here and do this thing, or go over to this side of the base and do whatever. You may not necessarily always agree with it or necessarily understand why, but just having that ability to just pivot and run with it as much as possible.
I love it. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So certifications, we beat that horse to death, but I mean, in your case, how do you see that can kind of pump up a resume for, like, what supply chain training would you recommend that folks get into to start aiming towards a DTC kind of function?
Yeah. Within actual certifications, I'm not 100% certain what's out there, like as a, whether that be in North America or global, like certification that every company would recognize. But one thing that your greatest resource is always going to be Google. going on Google, just researching different courses and classes that are out there in supply chain, and you'd be surprised how much of them are just completely free. They may not necessarily give you a legitimate certification, but a lot of them do provide stuff that you can put on your LinkedIn as that you've taken this course, and help build your resume up as well. Also that just because you don't get a certificate with it doesn't mean it can't be a talking point in your interview process that you've taken these courses. There's, when you're in the in-person interview, those are the times to kind of bring up those maybe non-certificate courses that you've taken, and, mention that you've been able to jump in and take these classes. Because also one thing when you're talking to someone who is hiring, like that showing that you've gone out and on your own time to do these classes, whether or not they're giving you a certificate, that kind of shows that hiring manager that you have the interest and the drive to go and learn these things.
So speaking of learning, we know the military teamwork thing hammered into us through the blood, genetic, and all that kind of stuff. It's ironclad. So how do you build that with your ops crew without doing the my way or the highway thing that probably immediately came to your mind at first to kind of build a good functioning team that actually works together instead of a group of individuals that work together?
Yeah. So, first thing that, at least within our team, that we've always done is just getting to know people on your team. We have once a quarter we'll do team builders where we're literally just going on and playing Jackbox games and having fun and joking around and having lunch together, and it builds that camaraderie of like just getting to know, being friends. You may not always get along with everyone on your team, and that's fine, but you at least need to get along within the work balance. But doing those small team builders that we do, like, I feel helps build those friendships. And I've always felt like you work better with friends like that than just coworkers. And then within the actual work lens of things, having that open door with everyone on your team, that they can come to you with their issues, and ideas on different projects they're working on. I currently only work on the UG side, but someone on the Hoka or Teva side will come to me and ask if this makes sense, and that's fine. Like, I may not know what's exactly going on in the world, but I can speak to from a greater view of things if stuff works. But honestly, just being open with your team and just being there to help has always been a big thing.
So hindsight's 2020. So what sucked the most about climbing the ladder there, and especially those under 2-year jumps? And how do you think that somebody here should prepare for that? Say, hey, this was my mistake, don't make it.
Yeah. So like I said, hindsight being 2020, there's times where moving up very quickly is not always the greatest. You don't fully learn everything that you should know in that position before you kind of get moved up. Don't always take the first opportunity that's out there, because it may not be the best opportunity. I kind of wish at times that I spent more time in the territory or the key account positions that I was in, to better learn what I was doing. Because if I would have taken on a little bit more responsibilities within those positions, it would have helped set me up for success later on in my next position. And that obviously is an internal aspect of it. External, I talk to people that have left their job for a different job in a different company, and sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't. A big thing that's going on now is like the whole job hopping, which it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. Biggest thing is it's got to be the right opportunity. But if you find that right opportunity with that right company, I feel like that's the bigger thing. Like, don't just jump at the first thing that's out there.
Yeah. So you mentioned you'd had opportunities. What kept you there?
Honestly, with Deckers, what's kept me here the longest is culture. It's one of the best companies I've worked for. Obviously, I got very lucky that it was kind of like my first corporate job, but I've talked to people that came in from other companies, and it's completely different. They may not exactly pay the most out there, but the company culture has definitely kept me here, and I've
Yeah.
been here for about 8 years now.
Talk to me about the culture.
So, like I mentioned, the employee resource groups have always been a big thing at Deckers. There's tons of them out there. A lot of the managers are great. They truly believe in work-life balance. Um, One thing that Deckers now offers is unlimited PTO, and where a lot of companies offer unlimited PTO and then they berate you for using it. I've been pushed to use my unlimited PTO. I've had where my manager comes up to me and is like, "Hey, take next week off. I noticed you haven't had time off in a while, so just take next week off or take a couple days here and there." It's more of like I'm being told to take time off, which, especially coming from military, you're not used to that. You don't get time off. So where like I said, a lot of companies that offer unlimited PTO, they don't truly mean it, but I feel like at Deckers, they definitely do. They also, like I said, the employee resource groups, they did a couple of years ago, they did a Shark Tank thing, style thing where they broke people up into groups if you wanted to, and you could pitch stuff to the company CEO and the brand presidents. And I actually believe one of the things that got pitched ended up being selected, and it's available now. And I believe it's the slip resistant stuff on Hoka that they're doing. So like they actually listen to their employees and they provide outlets for their employees with those resource groups, and have a good work-life balance.
Yeah, I think it was Fritos or Doritos. I mean, that came from listening to as a guy who's a janitor at the company.
Yep.
They're like, hey,
The
we need a
flaming
good
hot
snack.
Cheetos, I believe.
Yeah, it was. I think that was another one, but there was one that was even older.
Yep.
That was a big famous corporate example. So, I mean, did you see any other suggestions that kind of went up from those groups just by participating and paying attention? You're like, holy cow!
Yeah. I know there was some that were pitched that were good ideas, but I don't know if any more got selected. I believe some of them kind of got put on back burner where they may come out later on. But I'm not exactly sure what all got pitched, because obviously that was more, at least they only broadcasted like the final groups to everyone in the company, but they didn't make every single group get broadcasted to everyone. So a lot of it was just kind of like private within. You're pitching it to like I said, the CEO and then the brand presidents, and those, if they didn't pick it, you didn't really get to see it. So I unfortunately didn't get to see a lot of the products that got pitched.
Yeah, and we don't want to give away the secrets if somebody comes up with something really $1 million.
Right.
That's yeah, you got to be a little bit careful there. So, I mean, what's your favorite part of your day-to-day job? What kind of keeps you going? What's the challenge that you love overcoming?
Yeah. So really, there's two things that are kind of like my favorite parts of the job. Is one is working with my team. We have a great team that I'm a part of, and then two is having that freedom to kind of see where we can improve on things. And it's not just this is how we do it and this is how we've always done it, so we're not going to change. There's always that openness to listen to new ideas and listen to change on, is this a better way of doing things? So having that ability, especially like during when I'm not super busy, having that ability to just sit down with a bunch of different reports and figure out, is there a better way to do things? And then once, if I do figure it out, being able to pitch it to my boss and them actually running with it, and then not just taking the credit, but then giving me recognition for pitching that idea.
That's good. Yeah, there's nothing worse than the boss taking credit and then you just sit there quietly stew.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you have any questions for the audience that you'd like to kind of toss out there to get a feel for them?
I guess what is like everyone's biggest concern moving from military? Is it more of like fear of unknown, or is it like you're not believing that what you did in the military is going to translate, or is it just the overall job market?
Christopher, go.
I've been in the military for over 14 years, so naturally, I've been very comfortable and feeling very secure in what I do. Even now, as I haven't quite separated yet, but I am in the skill bridge program, it feels so surreal to be actually leaving. So I guess it is kind of a fear of the unknown, but more like adjusting to a completely different lifestyle. It's a whole new life. It really is, especially when you've been with the military for over 14 years.
Yeah, I definitely can understand. I mean, I did my four and was done. So props to everyone that has done their second contract and third contracts. You know, I give you guys a lot of props. I definitely could not do it. So you're doing something I couldn't do. So I appreciate all of you for doing that. And then having the bravery to realize that you need help moving from military to civilian life
I
and
like
doing
to
stuff
think
like this.
dedication is a
Yep.
good trait to carry into the workforce.
Yep. Yeah. And not just dedication, but that drive. And we all have dealt with that fear of the unknown. I'm sure everyone on here, before they enlisted, before they went to basic, before they went to their first duty station, they had that fear of the unknown of what was going to happen next. And for most, if not all of you, it's worked out great. So, you know, being able to jump in with both feet and just overcome that fear is really that first step, I feel like.
Oh, Michelle, shoot.
Morning, Tim. So yeah, definitely I do have 8 years of background in logistics and business analyst within the Navy. I definitely didn't expect to not be able to translate some of the stuff that I did in the Navy over
Mhm.
to the civilian life, especially in logistics. Logistics is pretty fluent. Like
Yep.
I feel for the most part, shipping, receiving, but some of the stuff that I did within there outside of the warehouse doesn't translate into the civilian world. And that is something I've definitely struggled with applying for logistics jobs. A lot of places are wanting, the degrees or
Mhm.
2+ experience years already within that company. Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. Just within, the logistics supply chain piece of it on trying to get that translated over and trying to find somebody to give you that chance and stuff. So yeah, it is definitely challenging.
Yeah, and one thing I would say to that too is because obviously, you know, a lot of companies want that experience and or that college degree. Um, I had neither when I stepped in to Deckers, so don't be afraid to step in at a lower position if needed. To get sometimes it's about getting your foot in the door with that company to get you that experience needed. It may be a position a little bit lower than you wanted, but at least it gets you your foot in the door. And then depending on that company, you may be able to move up fairly quickly to what you wanted. It may take a little bit longer in some companies, but I think the biggest thing is getting your foot in the door a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a big, I mean, I say it often, but you've got to check your ego. You might have been
Mhm.
like an all-star in the military, have enough fruit salad on your shoulder to put it out of place, but they don't care. They'll say, "Hey, thanks for
Yep.
your service. Can I buy you a coffee?" And that's it. They mean
Yep.
well, but it's you got to go in there and prove it. And you obviously went in there and proved it. So hey, I just want to thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the group before we send you back to work?
I mean, like I said, you guys are all doing the right thing. You've all obviously reached out for help to Seven Eagle Group, and they're doing a great thing putting these on. Just continue using these connections and fostering great relationships, and you know, don't be afraid. don't have that fear of the unknown. Just jump in and be willing to be open and honest and vulnerable at times when needed, and kind of just roll with everything that comes at you. You've all done a great job of it so far in the military. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you're at right now, kind of pursuing your next path forward.
Yep. You've experienced harder things. It's as simple as that. So,
Yep.
hey, Tim Michaels with UGG DTC at Decker's Brands, thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us, dropping some wisdom, sharing your stories. I thank you very much, sir. And you have a lovely day, and we will chat again.
You as well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.